The United States is entering a strange period. Not war, not a financial crisis, but disappearance. In 2025, more than 7,000 grocery and retail stores closed across America. But the scarier number isn't 7,000 towns, it's 30 million people, those living in food desert zones, where the nearest supermarket is 10 to 20 miles away. One morning you wake up, the familiar supermarket is locked, food prices are up 40%, and you have to drive twice the distance just to buy a few essentials. What's happening isn't just stores closing. It's older adults, low-income families, and small communities being left behind, right in the place they've lived their entire lives. So what you're about to see isn't a bankruptcy timeline. This is a list of the 10 largest grocery chains in America that have filed for bankruptcy, and more importantly, the real reasons behind each collapse. Warnings of a future no one wants to imagine. Get ready. The truth begins at number 10. A&P, the death of a 156-year-old empire. There are brands that are more than just places to buy groceries. They are the memories of an entire generation. And for millions of Americans born before the 1970s, A&P was a name that, when mentioned, almost lets you hear the smell of warm bread, the rattle of metal carts, and the deep sense of comfort from a more stable America. So when a system that once reached more than 16,000 stores, so large that Time magazine called it the most important company in America in the 20th century, went bankrupt not once, but twice, it was no longer a business story. It was a warning bell for the entire U.S. grocery industry. A&P faced a problem that people age 50+ today find all too familiar: costs rising faster than the ability to adapt. Between 2000 and 2010 alone, urban retail rents increased by nearly 18% on average. Fuel prices jumped as much as 29% in certain years, driving transportation costs sharply higher, even though grocery profit margins hovered around only 1 to 2%. When you earn just a few cents on every dollar, even small fluctuations can cut directly into profits. A massive empire that once seemed untouchable became a slow, heavy, expensive machine. Meanwhile, consumer behavior quietly shifted after the 2008 recession. Middle-income families, A&P's most loyal customer base, began switching to Walmart to save money, to Costco for better bulk pricing, and to Aldi to escape rising bills. They didn't abandon A&P because they disliked it. They left because A&P's average prices were around 7 to 15% higher than the market. And as living costs surged, Americans had no choice but to change where they bought food. Loyalty wasn't strong enough to beat electric bills, gas prices, medicine costs, and persistent inflation. By 2015, everything collapsed beyond rescue. In its bankruptcy filing, A&P disclosed more than $2.3 billion in debt. Suppliers demanded upfront payment. Shelves began to empty. Longtime employees said, "The store doesn't feel like it used to." And when the final 296 stores shut down, the clearest truth wasn't in the numbers, but in the community's reaction. Many neighborhoods instantly turned into food deserts, not in theory, but in reality. In New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and New York, elderly people had to drive an extra 20-30 minutes just to buy basic groceries. Small nearby stores lost customers and closed. Older workers lost their jobs and could not compete in today's hiring market. A&P didn't disappear with a loud crash. It vanished in a very American way, quietly, one store at a time, until people realized that a familiar part of their lives was gone forever. What chills Americans age 50+ the most isn't that a supermarket chain went bankrupt. It's that a 156-year-old empire, once dominant in the national grocery market, could still collapse simply because it could not keep up with a country changing faster than it could adapt. And that frightening question sets the stage for this entire list. If even A&P couldn't stay alive, then which grocery chain in America is truly safe in 2025? 9. Fresh and Easy. When a global giant misunderstood how Americans buy food. If A&P was a historic shock, then Fresh and Easy was a painful lesson in the overconfidence of an international corporation that believed it could recreate American shopping behavior using theory. In 2007, Tesco, the world's third-largest retailer at the time, entered the U.S. market with an ambition they didn't bother to hide: to build a modern, minimalist, self-service grocery chain that was efficient in the British style. They predicted Americans would love a neatly organized store, pre-prepped products, reasonable prices, and a shop fast, leave fast model. The theory sounded right. Reality was a very painful collision. After just a few years, almost every initial assumption was wrong. In states like California, Nevada, and Arizona, where Fresh and Easy opened more than 150 stores, consumers did not react the way Tesco expected. While Tesco focused on selling prepared foods, American buyers age 50+ saw fresh products as something they needed to touch, smell, and carefully inspect. Middle-aged shoppers who were used to asking employees about meat, fruit, expiration dates, instead walked into a store designed to have almost no interaction. To many people, that wasn't modern, it was unfamiliar, and they walked away. Later data showed that the average revenue per Fresh and Easy store was only half of Tesco's original expectations. Worse, the centralized warehouse model, a logistics system optimized for Europe, did not fit the geographic scale of the American West. Logistics were expensive, distribution was slow, products spoiled easily, and operating costs ballooned by hundreds of millions of dollars. By 2012, Tesco admitted to losing more than $1 billion on Fresh and Easy alone. This was one of the largest losses in European retail history in the US market. But the final blow wasn't in the numbers. It was in the fact that Fresh and Easy tried to change how Americans buy food, something tied to habits, emotions, and family memories, using a model designed in a meeting room halfway around the world. When customers don't trust the brand, don't connect with the experience, and don't see superior value, then no amount of technology or beautiful design can save a system that is burning money every single day. In 2015, Fresh and Easy filed for bankruptcy for the second time and shut down entirely within just a few months. But the most important point is what many American experts concluded afterward. Fresh and Easy didn't fail because they did a bad job, but because they misunderstood something that seemed simple. Buying food is not a logical behavior. It is an emotional behavior. And if a giant corporation that had succeeded across Europe could collapse just by misunderstanding Americans, then any chain can face the same fate. Dominic's, Chicago. There are disappearances so silent, you only realize them when it's already too late. Dominic's was one of those disappearances. No warning, no noise. Just one day, the once brightly lit doors across Chicago turned into empty glass panels, reflecting the emptiness in the hearts of people who had spent their entire lives attached to this place. For Chicagoans of the 1970s-90s, Dominic's wasn't simply a place to buy groceries. It was a routine, a memory, the smell of fresh bread every morning, the familiar aisles where children ran behind their mothers, a foundation for entire Italian, Polish, Irish immigrant communities that built part of the soul of the Midwest. More than 100 stores once formed a network people believed would last forever. Then everything changed the moment Safeway acquired Dominic's in 1998. The change didn't come from customers, nor from competition. It came from decisions made far away from Chicago, by people who had no understanding that this community lived on familiarity, local products, and employees who knew every customer by name. Safeway applied a nationwide standardized model, cutting staff, raising prices, removing local products, changing suppliers, and even changing the rhythm of neighborhoods that had been loyal to Dominic's for decades. And Chicagoans understood immediately. They were no longer being served by their store, but by a distant, unfamiliar version sent from a large corporation. The consequences happened faster than anyone predicted. In just over a decade, Dominic's lost up to 40% of its market share, according to the Chicago Tribune. Stores grew emptier, parking lots grew quieter, people moved to Jewel Osco, Aldi, or Mariano's, places that still preserved a sense of belonging. By 2013, Safeway shut down the entire chain, ending 95 years of history for a brand many Chicagoans still considered part of their family. But what hurt people most wasn't the business failure. It was the fact that a piece of Chicago's culture was erased, not because customers abandoned the brand, but because the brand abandoned the very community that had raised it. To this day, many neighborhoods still haven't filled that void. And perhaps the only thing left is the question for everyone who has ever lived in Chicago. Did you witness Dominic's disappear in your neighborhood? And how did it change the rhythm of life there? Share your story, because real memories are what truly show how America is changing. If you want to keep following these quiet shifts that directly affect the lives of people over 50, consider subscribing, so you don't miss the next part of a landscape that is changing every single day. 7. Marsh Supermarkets, Indiana, Ohio. Some grocery chains are killed by the market, but Marsh wasn't. Marsh was killed by the very people who were supposed to run it. For nearly a century, Marsh was the heart of dozens of communities across Indiana and Ohio. In the 70s, 90s, if you lived in this region, Marsh was where your family bought Monday night dinner, where older adults stopped every morning to buy milk and chat, and where young people got their first job. Nearly 150 stores, tens of thousands of employees, a stable, well-run system. Marsh didn't just sell food, it kept the rhythm of life across the Midwest. And then a private equity firm stepped in. From that moment, everything began collapsing in the exact script America has seen far too many times. The firm bought Marsh as a financial asset, not as a community serving chain. They cut costs to the point of tearing the system apart, reducing frontline staff, cutting fresh goods, switching to cheaper suppliers, even eliminating programs that served seniors, their most loyal and important customers. Quality dropped while prices rose. Stores that once felt warm became empty, cold, and lifeless. As service deteriorated, customers, especially older adults, were the first to leave. Cash flow collapsed. Inventory piled up. Debt increased every quarter. Every sign pointed to the same truth. Marsh was no longer being run by people who understood the grocery business, but by numbers on a spreadsheet in an office hundreds of miles away from Indiana. By 2017, Marsh filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. The chain was sold off piece by piece. Many locations closed permanently, creating food deserts in the heart of the Midwest. Employees who had stayed 20-30 years lost their jobs after a short notice, and the small communities, many of which had only one Marsh, lost their only source of fresh food. Marsh didn't die because of its customers. Marsh died because of decisions made by people who had never stood inside a Marsh store. And if you ever witnessed a Marsh closing in your own neighborhood, share it in the comments. Because your memory is an essential piece in understanding what truly happened to the Midwest in those years. 6. Family Dollar. Some bankruptcies come from debt. Some come from poor management. But the collapse of Family Dollar felt more like a public health disaster than a business failure. In 2022, federal inspectors entered Family Dollar's warehouse in West Memphis, Arkansas. What they saw shocked the entire retail industry. More than 1,000 rats, alive, dead, decomposing, right inside a facility storing food, medicine, and essential goods for hundreds of stores across the American South. The FDA report described widespread contamination, rat droppings on packaging, and merchandise tainted with biological hazards. The conclusion: 404 stores had to be shut down immediately. No negotiation, no delay. One order, and the doors rolled down. But the problem didn't start or end with that disaster. Family Dollar had already been weakened by rising operating costs, competition from Dollar General, and serious failures in supply chain management. Just months later, more than 390 additional stores closed due to prolonged losses. For low-income Americans, Family Dollar wasn't just a discount store. It was the place to buy the cheapest dinner for the family. The place where seniors purchased generic medicine at a price they could actually afford. The place poor towns without a Walmart, depended on to survive. When Family Dollar fell, entire areas became food deserts. The distance to the nearest store multiplied, and the people who suffered the most were always the ones with the fewest options. Family Dollar didn't collapse because customers left. It collapsed because of a disaster that the poorest communities had to absorb. And here's a question for you. If you live in a neighborhood with both Dollar General and Family Dollar, what's the biggest difference you notice between the two? And which one truly serves the community better? Your story could help others understand the reality that national headlines usually ignore. 5. Ultra Foods. Not every chain goes bankrupt because of bad management. Some die because of their own promise. Ultra Foods is the clearest example. For years, Ultra Foods was seen as a low-price paradise for hundreds of thousands of middle and low-income families in Indiana and Illinois. It was the place where you could fill an entire cart for 2/3 the cost of a regular supermarket. They survived on an ultra-thin margin model, relying on huge customer volume and fast inventory turnover. But that model only works when costs stay still. And America after 2014 was no longer a country of stable costs. When fuel prices rose, transportation costs surged. When minimum wage increased, Ultra Foods' paper-thin margins were ripped apart. When suppliers raised prices due to inflation, Ultra Foods couldn't raise theirs, because if they did, customers would leave immediately. All those shifts struck directly at their biggest weakness, a business model that could only survive when everything was cheap. While Ultra Foods struggled to hold the line on prices, larger competitors grew stronger. Walmart crushed them with scale. Aldi crushed them with ultra-low operating costs. Meijer crushed them with a modern distribution system. Ultra Foods no longer had room to breathe, let alone compete. In 2017, the last store closed. No noise, no drama, just a discount chain crushed by a market where costs rose faster than they could survive. And it leaves many people wondering even today, in an era of high inflation, which super cheap model do you believe actually stands a chance? Walmart, Aldi, or a completely different name? Your comparison might reveal a part of the market that data alone can't fully explain. 4. Jitney Jungle. In the American South, few supermarket chains carried the same sense of familiarity as Jitney Jungle. From Mississippi to Alabama, it appeared as part of everyday life. The old green signs, the warm, narrow aisles, the simple shopping trips tied to the memories of countless families for nearly a century. But Jitney Jungle's fate wasn't decided by memories. It was decided by cold numbers. In 1996, the chain was bought out in a major leveraged finance deal. And that was when the downward path began. Debt rose faster than revenue. Operating costs ballooned. An outdated distribution system, old warehouses, obsolete technology, all of it created a cost spiral that the grocery industry's 1% to 2% margins could never absorb. While Walmart, Kroger, and Publix were optimizing every cent, Jitney Jungle was trapped between an old model and loans tightening around its neck. Just 4 years later, in 2000, the chain filed for bankruptcy. Stores were sold off. The brand erased, closing nearly 100 years of existence. What many people mourned wasn't just a business disappearing, but how it disappeared. Quietly, without anyone getting the chance to say goodbye. And the question that still hangs today: did Jitney Jungle truly die because of mismanagement? Or was it simply that no one had the strength to save a local brand in an era where the giants dominated everything? 3. Pantry Pride. Before Walmart dominated, before Aldi became a low-cost storm, the East Coast once had a king of its own. People called Pantry Pride the discount king of the East Coast, and that title didn't come out of nowhere. At its peak, they owned 440 stores, ranking among the top 5 largest grocery chains in the United States. Anyone living in Florida, New Jersey, or Pennsylvania in the 70s, 80s had once pushed a shopping cart with Pantry Pride's signature orange-yellow logo. But even a king eventually loses the throne. Pantry Pride entered its decline through a series of poor management decisions. They expanded too quickly, borrowed too much, and kept the old model while competitors were changing at breakneck speed. Supercenters emerged. New technology emerged. Modern discount chains rushed into the market with lower operating costs and far faster inventory turnover. Pantry Pride tried to fight back with deep discounts and trimming operating costs. But the margins were already too thin to cut. Debt grew. Stores aged. Loyal customers dwindled. Eventually, they filed for bankruptcy, far quieter than the status they once had. No tragedy, no noise. Just a giant brand, turning off the lights and disappearing. Today, Pantry Pride survives only through the memories of older people who once saw it as the East Coast's national supermarket. And the lingering question: did the discount king of the East Coast fall because the times changed, or because it stopped too early in a race that never ends? Sure. 2. Carter's Foods. In Michigan, there are small towns where the name Carter's Foods used to be mentioned with the same trust as mentioning a family doctor. For 80 years, this was where people bought dinner, met neighbors, heard the latest news, and felt safe in the familiar rhythm of Midwest life. A local brand, not flashy, but as steady as the snow-covered roads of every winter. Then the price war began, and Carter's had no chance. When Walmart swept into Michigan with its low-price, large-scale model and margins optimized down to the cent, every local supermarket was immediately pushed into a defensive position. But the second blow was the fatal one. Meijer, a homegrown empire of Michigan, expanded its 24-hour supercenters, combining groceries plus household goods plus pharmaceuticals into a single destination. Compared on price, Carter's lost. Compared on scale, Carter's lost. Compared on inventory turnover, it lost even more. A chain with a few dozen stores could not compete with two giants owning modern logistics systems, massive distribution centers, and nearly limitless capital. The already thin grocery margins were squeezed to the point of suffocation. Carter's filed for bankruptcy, and the consequences went far beyond the company itself. In many northern Michigan towns, Carter's was the last supermarket within dozens of miles. When it disappeared, older residents had to drive farther. Low-income families lost access to affordable prices. Communities lost a trusted anchor. And the question that lingers still troubles many. Could Carter's have survived if Michigan had not become a battleground between Walmart and Meijer? 1. Fairway Market, New York. In New York, there are stores that don't just sell food. They sell the identity of the city itself. And for more than 8 decades, Fairway Market was exactly that soul. They didn't need flashy marketing. The smell of coffee roasted on site, the imported cheese counter, the long lines of New Yorkers crowding around the deli counters, all created a very New York feeling, something no national supermarket chain could ever replicate. But Fairway collapsed because of a classic mistake: letting Wall Street run a brand that never belonged to Wall Street. Starting in 2010, investment funds pushed Fairway into aggressive expansion. From 5 stores to 15, costs skyrocketed, debt ballooned to more than $300 million. Every new store became a new loss. When Amazon bought Whole Foods in 2017, the price war and delivery war became a battle Fairway had no chance of winning. In 2016, they filed for bankruptcy for the first time. In 2020, they filed for bankruptcy again. Iconic locations in the Upper West Side, Harlem, Red Hook, disappeared all at once. New Yorkers didn't just lose a supermarket, they lost a piece of the city's rhythm. And the question left for the audience is this: if a brand as deeply New York as Fairway couldn't survive, how much chance do other local chains have left? You've just witnessed 10 grocery chains that once fed America disappear in just a single decade. But the frightening part isn't the names that collapsed. It's the void they left behind. Longer drives, higher prices, and communities, especially people over 50, forced to fend for themselves in an America that's changing far too fast. This disappearance isn't stuck in the past. It's happening right now as you watch this video, and it will continue in the years ahead. And if you want to follow what happens next, please subscribe so you don't miss the next video.